Section 1 of Childe Harold's Pilgrimage, Canto IV. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Reading by alanmapstone. Childe Harold's Pilgrimage by George Gordon, Lord Byron. Canto IV, verses 1 to 19. I stood in Venice on the Bridge of Sighs, a palace and a prison on each hand. I saw from out the wave her structures rise, as from the stroke of the enchanter's wand. 1,000 years their cloudy wings expand around me, and the dying glory smiles. O'er the far times when many a subject land looked to the winged lion's marble piles, where Venice sat in state, throned on her 100 isles. She looks a sea Cybele, fresh from ocean, rising with her tiara of proud towers. At airy distance, with majestic motion, a ruler of the waters and their powers. And such she was, her daughters had their dowers, from spoils of nations and the exhaustless East, poured in her lap all gems in sparkling showers. In purple was she robed, and at her feast monarchs partook, and deemed their dignity increased. In Venice Tasso's echoes are no more, and silent rows the songless gondolier. Her palaces are crumbling to the shore, and music meets not always now the ear. Those days are gone, but beauty still is here. States fall, arts fade, but nature does not die, nor yet forget how Venice once was dear, the pleasant place of all festivity, the revel of the earth, the mask of Italy. But unto us she hath a spell beyond, her name in story, and her long array of mighty shadows whose dim forms despond above the dogeless city's vanished sway. Ours is a trophy which will not decay with the Rialto. Shylock and the Moor and Pierre cannot be swept or worn away. Keystones of the arch, though all were o'er, for us repeopled were the solitary shore. The beings of the mind are not of clay, essentially immortal they create, and multiply in us a brighter ray, and more beloved existence, that which fate prohibits to dull life in this our state of mortal bondage, by these spirits supplied, first exiles, then replaces what we hate, watering the heart whose early flowers have died, and with fresher growth replenishing the void. Such is the refuge of our youth and age, the first from hope, the last from vacancy, and this worn feeling peoples many a page, and may be that which grows beneath mine eye. Yet there are things whose strong reality outshines our fairyland in shapes and hues, more beautiful than our fantastic sky, and the strange constellation which the Muse, o'er her wild universe, is skilful to diffuse. I saw or dreamed of such, but let them go. They came like truth and disappeared like dreams, and whatsoe'er they were are now but so. I could replace them if I would, still teems my mind with many a form which aptly seems such as I sought for and at moments found. Let these two go, for waking reason deems such overweening fantasies unsound, and other voices speak, and other sights surround. I've taught me other tongues, and in strange eyes have made me not a stranger. To the mind, which is itself, no changes bring surprise. Nor is it harsh to make, nor hard to find, a country with a or without mankind. Yet was I born where men are proud to be, not without cause, and should I leave behind the inviolate land of the sage and free, and seek me out a home by a remoter sea. Perhaps I loved it well, and should I lay my ashes in a soil which is not mine, my spirit shall resume it, if we may, unbodied choose a sanctuary. I twine my hopes of being remembered in my line with my land's language. If too fond and far, these aspirations in their scope incline. If my fame should be, as my fortunes are, of hasty growth and blight, and dull oblivion bar. My name from out the temple where the dead are honoured by the nations, let it be, and like the laurels on a loftier head, and be the Spartan's epitaph on me. Sparta hath many a worthier son than he. Meantime I seek no sympathies nor heed. The thorns which I have reaped are of the tree I planted, they have torn me and I bleed. I should have known what fruit would spring from such a seed. The spouseless Adriatic mourns her lord, and annual marriage now no more renewed. The blue centaur lies rotting unrestored, neglected garment of her widowhood. St. Mark yet sees his lion where he stood, stand but in mockery of his withered power, over the proud place where an emperor sued, and monarchs gazed and envied in the hour, when Venice was a queen with an unequalled dower. The Swabian sued, and now the Austrian reigns. An emperor tramples where an emperor knelt. Kingdoms are shrunk to provinces, and chains clank over sceptred cities. Nations melt from power's high pinnacle when they have felt the sunshine for a while, and downward go, like Lawain loosened from the mountain's belt. Oh, for 1 hour of blind old Dandolo, the octogenarian chief, Byzantium's conquering foe. Before St. Mark still glow his steeds of brass, their gilded collars glittering in the sun. But is not Doria's menace come to pass? Are they not bridled? Venice lost and won, her 1300 years of freedom done, sinks like a seaweed whence she rose. Better be whelmed beneath the waves, and shun, even in destruction's depth, her foreign foes, from whom submission wrings an infamous repose. In youth she was all glory, a new Tyre, her very byword sprung from victory, the planter of the lion which through fire and blood she bore o'er subject earth and sea, though making many slaves herself still free, and Europe's bulwark gainst the Ottomite. Witness Troy's rival, Candia, vouch it ye, immortal waves, that saw Lepanto's fight. For ye are names no time nor tyranny can blight. Statues of glass, all shivered, the long file of her dead doges are declined to dust. But where they dwelt, the vast and sumptuous pile bespeaks the pageant of their splendid trust. Their sceptre broken and their sword in rust have yielded to the stranger empty halls, thin streets, and foreign aspects, such as must too oft remind her who and what enthralls, have flung a desolate cloud o'er Venice' lovely walls. When Athens' armies fell at Syracuse, and fettered thousands bore the yoke of war, Redemption rose up in the Attic muse, her voice their only ransom from afar. See, as they chant the tragic hymn, the car of the o'ermastered victor stops, the reins fall from his hands, his idle scimitar starts from its belt, he rends his captive's chains, and bids him thank the bard for freedom and his strains. Thus, Venice, if no stronger claim were thine, were all thy proud historic deeds forgot, thy choral memory of the bard divine, thy love of Tasso, should have cut the knot which ties thee to thy tyrants, and thy lot is shameful to the nations, most of all Albion to thee. The ocean queen should not abandon ocean's children. In the fall of Venice think of thine, despite thy watery wall. I loved her from my boyhood. She to me was as a fairy city of the heart, rising like water columns from the sea, of joy the sojourn and of wealth the mart. And Otway, Radcliffe, Schiller, Shakespeare's art have stamped her image in me, and e'en so, although I found her thus, we did not part, perchance e'en dearer in her day of woe, than when she was a boast, a marvel, and a show. I can repeople with the past, and of the present there is still for eye and thought a meditation chastened down enough, and more, it may be, than I hoped or sought, and of the happiest moments which were wrought within the web of my existence, some from thee, fair Venice, have their colours caught. There are some feelings time cannot benumb, nor torture shape, or mine would now be cold and dumb. End of section 1.
Section 2 of Childe Harold's Pilgrimage, Canto IV. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Alan Weyman. Childe Harold's Pilgrimage by George Gordon, Lord Byron. Canto IV, stanzas 20 to 41. But from their nature will the tannin grow loftiest on loftiest and least sheltered rocks, rooted in barrenness, where nought below of soil supports them gainst the alpine shocks of eddying storms, yet springs the trunk and mocks the howling tempest, till its height and frame are worthy of the mountains from whose blocks of bleak grey granite into life it came, and grew a giant tree. The mind may grow the same. Existence may be born, and the deep root of life and sufferance make its firm abode in bare and desolated bosoms. Mute the camel labours with the heaviest load, and the wolf dies in silence. Not bestowed in vain should such examples be, if they, things of ignoble or of savage mood, endure and shrink not, we of nobler clay may temper it to bear. It is but for a day. All suffering doth destroy, or is destroyed even by the sufferer, and in each event ends. Some with hope replenished and rebuoyed return to whence they came, with like intent, and weave their web again. Some, bowed and bent, wax grey and ghastly, withering ere their time, and perish with the reed on which they leant. Some seek devotion, toil, war, good or crime, according as their souls were formed to sink or climb. But ever and anon of griefs subdued there comes a token like a scorpion's sting, scarce seen, but with fresh bitterness imbued. And slight withal may be the things which bring back on the heart the weight which it would fling aside for ever. It may be a sound, a tone of music, summer's eve, or spring, a flower, the wind, the ocean, which shall wound, striking the electric chain wherewith we are darkly bound. And how and why we know not, nor can trace home to its cloud this lightning of the mind, but feel the shock renewed, nor can efface the blight and blackening which it leaves behind, which out of things familiar, undesigned, when least we deem of such, calls up to view the spectres whom no exorcism can bind. The cold, the changed, perchance the dead, anew, the mourned, the loved, the lost, too many, yet how few! But my soul wanders, I demand it back to meditate amongst decay, and stand a ruin amidst ruins, there to track fallen states and buried greatness, o'er a land which was the mightiest in its old command, and is the loveliest, and must ever be the master mould of Nature's heavenly hand, wherein were cast the heroic and the free, the beautiful, the brave, the lords of earth and sea, the commonwealth of kings, the men of Rome. And even since, and now, fair Italy, thou art the garden of the world, the home of all art yields and nature can decree. Even in thy desert, what is like to thee? Thy very weeds are beautiful, thy waste more rich than other climes' fertility, thy wreck a glory, and thy ruin graced with an immaculate charm which cannot be defaced. The moon is up, and yet it is not night. Sunset divides the sky with her. A sea of glory streams along the alpine height of blue Friuli's mountains. Heaven is free from clouds, but of all colours seems to be, melted to one vast iris of the west, where the day joins the past eternity; while, on the other hand, meek Dian's crest floats through the azure air, an island of the blest. A single star is at her side, and reigns with her o'er half the lovely heaven, but still yon sunny sea heaves brightly, and remains rolled o'er the peak of the far Ratian hill, as day and night contending were, until Nature reclaimed her order. Gently flows the deep-dyed Brenta, where their hues instil the odorous purple of a newborn rose, which streams upon her stream, and glassed within it glows, filled with the face of heaven, which from afar comes down upon the waters, all its hues, from the rich sunset to the rising star, their magical variety diffuse. And now they change. A paler shadow strews its mantle o'er the mountains, parting day dies like the dolphin, whom each pang imbues with a new colour as it gasps away, the last still loveliest, till 'tis gone, and all is grey. There is a tomb in Arqua. Reared in air, pillared in their sarcophagus, repose the bones of Laura's lover. Here repair many familiar with his well-sung woes, the pilgrims of his genius. He arose to raise a language, and his land reclaim from the dull yoke of her barbaric foes, watering the tree which bears his lady's name with his melodious tears. He gave himself to fame. They keep his dust in Arqua, where he died. the mountain village where his latter days went down the vale of years. And 'tis their pride, an honest pride, and let it be their praise, to offer to the passing stranger's gaze his mansion and his sepulchre. Both plain and venerably simple, such as raise a feeling more accordant with his strain than if a pyramid formed his monumental fane. And the soft quiet hamlet where he dwelt is one of that complexion which seems made for those who their mortality have felt, and sought a refuge from their hopes decayed in the deep umbrage of a green hill's shade, which shows a distant prospect far away of busy cities, now in vain displayed, for they can lure no further, and the ray of a bright sun can make sufficient holiday, developing the mountains, leaves and flowers, and shining in the brawling brook, whereby, clear as its current, glide the sauntering hours with a calm languor, which, though to the eye idless it seem, hath its morality. If from society we learn to live, 'tis solitude should teach us how to die. It hath no flatterers, vanity can give no hollow aid, alone man with his God must strive. Or it may be with demons, who impair the strength of better thoughts, and seek their prey in melancholy bosoms, such as were of moody texture from their earliest day, and loved to dwell in darkness and dismay, deeming themselves predestined to a doom which is not of the pangs that pass away, making the sun like blood, the earth a tomb, the tomb a hell, and hell itself a murkier gloom. Ferrara, in thy wide and grass-grown streets, whose symmetry was not for solitude, there seems as 'twere a curse upon the seats of former sovereigns, and the antique brood of Este, which for many an age made good its strength within thy walls, and was of yore patron or tyrant, as the changing mood of petty power impelled, of those who wore the wreath which Dante's brow alone had worn before. And Tasso is their glory and their shame. Hark to his strain, and then survey his cell, and see how dearly earned Torquato's fame, and where Alfonso bade his poet dwell. The miserable despot could not quell the insulted mind he sought to quench, and blend with the surrounding maniacs in the hell where he had plunged it. Glory without end scattered the clouds away, and on that name attend the tears and praises of all time, while thine would rot in its oblivion, in the sink of worthless dust, which from thy boasted line is shaken into nothing. But the link thou formest in his fortunes bids us think of thy poor malice, naming thee with scorn. Alfonso, how thy ducal pageants shrink from thee, if in another station born, scarce fit to be the slave of him thou madest to mourn. Thou, formed to eat and be despised and die, even as the beasts that perish, save that thou hadst a more splendid trough and wider sty. He, with a glory round his furrowed brow, which emanated then, and dazzles now in face of all his foes, the Cruscan choir, and Boileau, whose rash envy could allow no strain which shamed his country's creaking lyre, that whetstone of the teeth, monotony in wire. Peace to Torquato's injured shade. 'Twas his in life and death to be the mark where wrong aimed with their poisoned arrows, but to miss. O victor unsurpassed in modern song! Each year brings forth its millions, But how long the tide of generations shall roll on, and not the whole combined and countless throng compose a mind like thine? Though all in one condensed their scattered rays, they would not form a sun. Great as thou art, yet paralleled by those thy countrymen, before thee born to shine, the bards of hell and chivalry. First rose the Tuscan father's comedy divine, then, not unequal to the Florentine, the southern Scot, the minstrel who called forth a new creation with his magic line, and, like the Ariosto of the North, sang lady love and war, romance and knightly worth. The lightning rent from Ariosto's bust the iron crown of laurel's mimicked leaves, nor was the ominous element unjust, for the true laurel wreath which glory weaves is of the tree no bolt of thunder cleaves, and the false semblance but disgraced his brow. Yet still, if fondly superstition grieves, know that the lightning sanctifies below whate'er it strikes. Yon head is doubly sacred now. End of section 2.
Section 3 of Childe Harold's Pilgrimage, Canto IV. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information, or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by alanmapstone. Childe Harold's Pilgrimage by George Gordon, Lord Byron. Canto IV, verses 42 to 59. Italia, O Italia, thou who hast the fatal gift of beauty, which became a funeral dower of present woes and past, on thy sweet brow is sorrow ploughed by shame, and annals graved in characters of flame. O God, that thou wert in thy nakedness less lovely or more powerful, and couldst claim thy right and all the robbers back, who press to shed thy blood, and drink the tears of thy distress. Then mightst thou more appall, or, less desired, be homely and be peaceful, undeplored for thy destructive charms. Then, still untired, would not be seen the armed torrents poured down the deep Alps, nor would the hostile horde of many nations spoilers from the Po quaff blood and water, nor the stranger's sword be thy sad weapon of defence, and so, victor or vanquished, thou the slave of friend or foe. Wandering in youth, I traced the path of him, the Roman friend of Rome's least mortal mind, the friend of Tully. As my bark did skim the bright blue waters with a fanning wind, came Megara before me, and behind Aegina lay, Piraeus on the right, and Corinth on the left. I lay reclined along the prow, and saw all these unite in ruin, even as he had seen the desolate sight. For time hath not rebuilt them, but upreared barbaric dwellings on their shattered site, which only make more mourned and more endeared the few last rays of their far scattered light, and the crushed relics of their vanished might. The Roman saw these tombs in his own age, these sepulchres of cities, which excite sad wonder, and his yet surviving page the mortal lesson bears, drawn from such a pilgrimage. That page is now before me, and on mine his country's ruin added to the mass of perished states he mourned in their decline, and I in desolation. All that was of then destruction is, and now alas! Rome, Rome imperial, bows her to the storm, in the same dust and blackness, and we pass the skeleton of her titanic form, wrecks of another world whose ashes are still warm. Yet Italy, through every other land, thy wrongs should ring, and shall from side to side, mother of arts, at once of arms. Thy hand was then our guardian, and is still our guide, parent of our religion, whom the wide nations have knelt to for the keys of heaven. Europe, repentant of her parricide, shall yet redeem thee, and, all backward driven, roll the barbarian tide, and sue to be forgiven. But Arno wins us to her fair white walls, where the Etrurian Athens claims and keeps a softer feeling for her fairy halls. Girt by her theatre of hills, she reaps her corn, and wine, and oil, and plenty leaps to laughing life with her redundant horn. Along the banks where smiling Arno sweeps was modern luxury of commerce born, and buried learning rose, redeemed to a new morn. There, too, the goddess loves in stone, and fills the air around with beauty. We inhale the ambrosial aspect, which, beheld, instills part of its immortality. The veil of heaven is half undrawn. Within the pale we stand, and in that form and face behold what mind can make when nature's self would fail. And to the fond idolaters of old, envy the innate flash which such a soul could mould. We gaze and turn away, and know not where, dazzled and drunk with beauty, till the heart reels with its fullness. There, for ever there, chained to the chariot of triumphal art, we stand as captives, and would not depart. Away, there need no words nor terms precise, the paltry jargon of the marble mart, where pedantry gulls folly, we have eyes. Blood, pulse, and breast confirm the Dardan shepherd's prize. Appearedst thou not to Paris in this guise, or more to deeply blessed Anchius, or in all thy perfect goddess-ship, when lies before thee thy own vanquished Lord of Wars, and gazing in thy face toward a star, laid on thy lap, his eyes to thee upturn, feeding on thy sweet cheek, while thy lips are with lava kisses melting while they burn, showered on his eyelids, brow, and mouth, as from an urn. Glowing and circumfused in speechless love, their full divinity inadequate that feeling to express or to improve, the gods become as mortals, and man's fate has moments like their brightest. But the weight of earth recoils upon us, let it go. We can recall such visions, and create, from what has been or might be, things which grow into thy statue's form, and look like gods below. I leave to learned fingers and wise hands the artist and his ape to teach and tell how well his connoisseurship understands the graceful bend and the voluptuous swell. Let these describe the undescribable. I would not their vile breath should crisp the stream wherein that image shall for ever dwell. the unruffled mirror of the loveliest dream that ever left the sky on the deep soul of beam. In Santa Croce's holy precinct lie ashes which make it holier, dust which is, even in itself, an immortality. Though there were nothing save the past, and this, the particle of those sublimities which have relapsed to chaos. Here repose Angelo's, Alfieri's bones, and his, the starry Galileo, with his woes. Here Machiavelli's earth returned to whence it rose. These are 4 minds, which, like the elements, might furnish forth creation. Italy. Time, which hath wronged thee with 10,000 rents of thine imperial garment, shall deny, and hath denied to every other sky, spirits which soar from ruin. Thy decay is still impregnate with divinity, which gilds it with revivifying ray. Such as the great of yore, Canova is today. But where repose the all Etruscan 3? Dante and Petrarch, and, scarce less than they, the bard of prose, creative spirit, he of the 100 tales of love, where did they lay their bones, distinguished from our common clay in death as life? Are they resolved to dust, and have their country's marbles naught to say? Could not her quarries furnish forth one bust, did they not to her breast their filial earth intrust? Ungrateful Florence, Dante sleeps afar, like Scipio, buried by the upbraiding shore. Thy factions in their worse than civil war proscribed the bard whose name for evermore their children's children would in vain adore with the remorse of ages. And the crown, which Petrarch's laureate brow supremely wore, upon a far and foreign soil had grown, his life, his fame, his grave, though rifled, not thine own. Boccaccio to his parent earth bequeathed his dust, and lies it not her great among, with many a sweet and solemn requiem breathed o'er him who formed the Tuscan siren's tongue? That music in itself, whose sounds are song, the poetry of speech? No, even his tomb uptorn must bear the hyena bigot's wrong, no more amidst the meaner dead find room, nor claim a passing sigh, because it told for whom. And Santa Croce wants their mighty dust, yet for this want more noted as of yore, the Caesar's pageant shorn of Brutus' bust, did but of Rome's best son remind her more. Happier Ravenna, on thy hoary shore, fortress of falling empire, honoured sleeps the immortal exile. Arqua, too, her store of tuneful relics proudly claims and keeps, while Florence vainly begs her banished dead, and weeps. End of section 3.
Section 4 of Childe Harold's Pilgrimage, Canto IV. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Childe Harold's Pilgrimage by George Gordon, Lord Byron, Canto IV. Verses 60 to 77. What is her pyramid of precious stones, of porphyry, jasper, agate, and all hues, of gem and marble, to encrust the bones of merchant dukes, the momentary dews, which, sparkling to the twilight stars, infuse freshness in the green turf that wraps the dead, whose names are mausoleums to the Muse, are gently pressed with far more reverent tread than ever paced the slab which paves the princely head. There be more things to greet the heart and eyes in Arna's dome of art's most princely shrine, where sculpture with her rainbow sister vies. There be more marvels yet, but not for mine, for I have been accustomed to entwine my thoughts with nature rather in the field than art in galleries, though a work divine calls for my spirit's homage, yet it yields less than it feels, because the weapon which it yields is of another temper, and I roam by Thrasimine's lake, in the defiles fatal to Roman rashness, more at home. For there the Carthaginian's warlike wiles come back before me, as his skill beguiles the host between the mountains and the shore, where courage falls in her despairing files, and torrents, swollen to rivers with their gore, reek through the sultry plain, with legions scattered o'er, like to a forest felled by mountain winds. And such the storm of battle on this day, and such the frenzy whose convulsion blinds to all save carnage, that beneath the fray an earthquake reeled unheededly away. None felt stern nature rocking at his feet, and yawning forth a grave for those who lay upon their bucklers for a winding sheet. Such is the absorbing hate when warring nations meet. The earth to them was as a rolling bark, which bore them to eternity. They saw the ocean round, but had no time to mark the motions of the vessel. Nature's law, in them suspended, recked not of the awe which reigns when mountains tremble, and the birds plunge in the clouds for refuge, and withdraw from their down-toppling nests, and bellowing herds stumble o'er heaving plains, and man's dread hath no words. Far other seen is Thrasymene now, her lake a sheet of silver, and her plain rent by no ravage save the gentle plough. Her aged trees rise thick as once the slain lay where their roots are, but a brook hath ta'en a little reel of scanty stream and bed, a name of blood from that day's sanguine rain. And Sanguinetto tells ye where the dead made the earth wet, and turned the unwilling waters red. But thou, Clytemnus, in thy sweetest wave, of the most living crystal that was e'er the haunt of river nymph, to gaze and lave her limbs where nothing hid them, thou dost rear thy grassy banks whereon the milk-white steer grazes, the purest god of gentle waters, and most serene of aspect, and most clear. Surely that stream was unprofaned by slaughters, a mirror and a bath for beauty's youngest daughters. And on thy happy shore a temple still, of small and delicate proportion keeps, upon a mild acclivity of hill, its memory of thee. Beneath it sweeps thy current's calmness, oft from out it leaps the finny darter with the glittering scales, who dwells and revels in thy glassy deeps, while, chance, some scattered water lily sails down where the shallower wave still tells its bubbling tales. Pass not unblessed the genius of the place, if through the air a zephyr more serene wind to the brow 'tis his, and if ye trace along his margin a more eloquent green, if on the heart the freshness of the scene sprinkle its coolness, and from the dry dust of weary life a moment lave it clean with nature's baptism, 'tis to him ye must pay orisons for this suspension of disgust. The roar of waters, from the headlong height Velino cleaves the wave-worn precipice, the fall of waters, rapid as the light, the flashing mass foams shaking the abyss. The hell of waters, where they howl and hiss, and boil in endless torture, while the sweat of their great agony, wrung out from this their phlegethon, Curls round the rocks of jet that gird the gulf around in pitiless horror set, and mounts in spray the skies, and thence again returns in an unceasing shower, which round, with its unemptied cloud of gentle rain, is an eternal April to the ground, making it all one emerald. How profound the gulf, and how the giant element from rock to rock leaps with delirious bound, crushing the cliffs, which downward whirl and rend with his fierce footsteps, yielding chasms of fearful vent to the broad column which rolls on, and shows more like the fountain of an infant sea, torn from the womb of mountains by the throes of a new world, than only thus to be parent of rivers which flow gushingly with many windings through the vale. Look back, lo, where it comes like an eternity, as if to sweep down all things in its track, charming the eye with dread, a matchless cataract, horribly beautiful, but on the verge, from side to side, beneath the glittering morn, an iris sits, amidst the infernal surge, like hope upon a death-bed, and unworn its steady dies, while all around is torn by the distracted waters, bears serene its brilliant hues with all their beams unshorn, resembling, mid the torture of the scene, love watching madness with unalterable mien. Once more upon the woody Apennine, the infant Alps, which, had I not before gazed on their mightier parents, where the pine sits on more shaggy summits, and where roar the thundering Lorwine, might be worshipped more. But I have seen the soaring Jungfrau rear her never-trodden snow, and seen the hoar glaciers of bleak Mont Blanc both far and near, and in Chimeri heard the thunder hills of fear, the Acroceronian mountains of old name, and on Parnassus seen the eagles fly, like spirits of the spot, as 'twere for fame, for still they soared unutterably high. I've looked on Ida with a Trojan eye, Athos, Olympus, Etna, Atlas, made these hills seem things of lesser dignity, all save the lone Soractis' height displayed, not now in snow, which asks the lyric Roman's aid, for our remembrance, and from out the plain heaves like a long-swept wave about to break, and on the curl hangs pausing. Not in vain may he who will his recollections rake, and quoting classic raptures, and awake the hills with Latian echoes, I abhorred too much, to conquer for the poet's sake, the drilled dull lesson, forced down word by word, in my repugnant youth, with pleasure to record aught that recalls the daily drug which sterned my sickening memory, and, though time hath taught my mind to meditate what then it learned, yet such the fixed inveteracy wrought by the impatience of my early thought, that, with the freshness wearing out before my mind could relish what it might have sought, if free to choose, I cannot now restore its health, but what it then detested, still abhor. Then farewell, Horace, whom I hated so, not for thy faults, but mine. It is a curse to understand, not feel, thy lyric flow, to comprehend, but never love thy verse, although no deeper moralist rehearse our little life, nor bard prescribe his art, nor livelier satirist the conscience pierce, awakening without wounding the touched heart. Yet fare thee well, upon Soracte's ridge we part. End of section 4.
Section 5 of Childe Harold's Pilgrimage, Canto IV. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Alan Weyman. Childe Harold's Pilgrimage by George Gordon, Lord Byron, Canto IV, stanzas 78 to 93. O Rome, my country, city of the soul, the orphans of the heart must turn to thee, lone mother of dead empires, and control in their shut breasts their petty misery. What are our woes and sufferance? Come and see the cypress, hear the owl, and plod your way o'er steps of broken thrones and temples, ye, whose agonies are evils of a day. A world is at our feet as fragile as our clay. The Niobe of nations, there she stands, childless and crownless in her voiceless woe, an empty urn within her withered hands, whose holy dust was scattered long ago. The Scipio's tomb contains no ashes now, the very sepulchres lie tenantless of their heroic dwellers. Dost thou flow, old Tiber, through a marble wilderness? Rise with thy yellow waves and mantle her distress. The Goth, the Christian, time, war, flood, and fire, have dwelt upon the seven-hilled city's pride. She saw her glories star by star expire, and up the steep barbarian monarchs ride, where the car climbed the Capitol. Far and wide temple and tower went down, nor left a sight. Chaos of ruins! Who shall trace the void, or the dim fragments cast a lunar light, and say, here was, or is, where all is doubly night? The double night of ages, and of her, night's daughter, ignorance, hath wrapped and wrap all round us. We but feel our way to err. The ocean hath its chart, the stars their map, and knowledge sets them on her ample lap. But Rome is as the desert, where we steer, stumbling o'er recollections. Now we clap our hands and cry Eureka, it is clear, when but some false mirage of ruin rises near. Alas, the lofty city! And alas, the trebly 100 triumphs, and the day when Brutus made the dagger's edge surpass the conqueror's sword in bearing fame away. Alas for Tully's voice, and Virgil's lay, and Livy's pictured page! But these shall be her resurrection, all beside, decay. Alas for earth! For never shall we see that brightness in her eye she bore when Rome was free. O thou, whose chariot rolled on Fortune's wheel, triumphant Sulla! Thou, who didst subdue thy country's foes ere thou wouldst pause to feel the wrath of thy own wrongs, or reap the dew of hoarded vengeance till thine eagles flew o'er prostrate Asia! Thou, who with thy frown annihilated senates! Roman too, with all thy vices, for thou didst lay down with an atoning smile a more than earthly crown, the dictatorial wreath. Couldst thou divine, to what would one day dwindle that which made thee more than mortal, and that so supine by aught than Romans Rome should thus be laid? She who was named eternal, and arrayed her warriors but to conquer, she who veiled earth with her haughty shadow, and displayed, until the o'er-canopied horizon failed, her rushing wings. O she who was almighty hailed! Sulla was first of victors. But our own, the sagest of usurpers, Cromwell, he too swept off senates while he hewed the throne down to a block. Immortal rebel! See what crimes it costs to be a moment free and famous through all ages. But beneath his fate the moral lurks of destiny. His day of double victory and death beheld him win 2 realms, and happier yield his breath. The third of the same moon whose former course had all but crowned him, on the self-same day deposed him gently from his throne of force, and laid him with the earth's preceding clay. And showed not fortune thus how fame and sway, and all we deem delightful, and consume our souls to compass through each arduous way, are in her eyes less happy than the tomb? Were they but so in man's, how different were his doom! And thou, dread statue, yet existent in the austerest form of naked majesty, thou who beheldest, mid the assassins' din, at thy bathed base the bloody Caesar lie, folding his robe in dying dignity, an offering to thine altar from the queen of gods and men, great Nemesis, did he die, and thou too perish, Pompey? Have ye been victors of countless kings, or puppets of a scene? And thou, the thunder-stricken nurse of Rome, she-wolf, whose brazen-imaged dugs impart the milk of conquest yet within the dome, where, as a monument of antique art, thou standest, mother of the mighty heart, which the great founder sucked from thy wild teat, scorched by the Roman Jove's ethereal dart, and thy limbs blacked with lightning, dost thou yet guard thine immortal cubs, nor thy fond charge forget? Thou dost, but all thy foster babes are dead, the men of iron, and the world hath reared cities from out their sepulchres. Men bled in imitation of the things they feared, and fought and conquered, and the same course steered, at apish distance. But as yet none have, nor could, the same supremacy have neared, save one vain man, who is not in the grave, but, vanquished by himself, to his own slaves a slave, the fool of false dominion, and a kind of bastard Caesar, following him of old with steps unequal. For the Roman's mind was modelled in a less terrestrial mould, with passions fiercer, yet a judgment cold, and an immortal instinct which redeemed the frailties of a heart so soft yet bold. Alcides with the distaff now he seemed at Cleopatra's feet, and now himself he beamed, and came, and saw, and conquered. But the man who would have tamed his eagles down to flee, like a trained falcon in the Gallic van, which he in sooth long led to victory, with a deaf heart which never seemed to be a listener to itself, was strangely framed, with but one weakest weakness, vanity. Coquettish in ambition, still he aimed at what? Can he avouch, or answer what he claimed? And would be all or nothing, nor could wait for the sure grave to level him. Few years had fixed him with the Caesars in his fate, on whom we tread. For this the conqueror rears the arch of triumph, and for this the tears and blood of earth flow on as they have flowed, an universal deluge, which appears without an ark for wretched man's abode, and ebbs but to reflow. Renew thy rainbow, God. What from this barren being do we reap? Our senses narrow, and our reason frail, life short, and truth a gem which loves the deep, and all things weighed in custom's falsest scale. Opinion an omnipotence, whose veil mantles the earth with darkness, until right and wrong are accidents, and men grow pale, lest their own judgments should become too bright, and their free thoughts be crimes, and earth have too much light. End of section 5. Section 6 of Childe Harold's Pilgrimage, Canto IV. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Alan Weyman. Childe Harold's Pilgrimage by George Gordon, Lord Byron. Canto IV. Stanzas 94 to 114. And thus they plod in sluggish misery, rotting from sire to son and age to age, proud of their trampled nature, and so die, bequeathing their hereditary rage to the new race of inborn slaves, who wage war for their chains, and rather than be free, bleed gladiator-like, and still engage within the same arena where they see their fellows fall before, like leaves of the same tree. I speak not of men's creeds, they rest between man and his Maker, but of things allowed, averred, and known, and daily, hourly seen, the yoke that is upon us doubly bowed, and the intent of tyranny avowed, the edict of earth's rulers, who are grown the apes of him who humbled once the proud, and shook them from their slumbers on the throne. Too glorious, were this all his mighty arm had done. Can tyrants but by tyrants conquered be, and freedom find no champion and no child, such as Columbia saw arise when she sprung forth a Pallas, armed and undefiled? Or must such minds be nourished in the wild, deep in the unpruned forest, midst the roar of cataracts, where nursing nature smiled on infant Washington? Has earth no more such seeds within her breast, or Europe no such shore? But France got drunk with blood to vomit crime, and fatal have her Saturnalia been to freedom's cause in every age and clime, because the deadly days which we have seen, and vile ambition that built up between man and his hopes an adamantine wall, and the base pageant last upon the scene, are grown the pretext for the eternal thrall which nips life's tree, and dooms man's worst, his second fall. Yet freedom, yet thy banner, torn but flying, streams like the thunderstorm against the wind. Thy trumpet voice, though broken now and dying, the loudest still the tempest leaves behind. Thy tree hath lost its blossoms, and the rind, chopped by the axe, looks rough and little worth, but the sap lasts, and still the seed we find, sown deep, even in the bosom of the north. So shall a better spring less bitter fruit bring forth. There is a stern round tower of other days, firm as a fortress, with its fence of stone, such as an army's baffled strength delays, standing with half its battlements alone, and with 2000 years of ivy grown, the garland of eternity, where wave the green leaves over all by time o'erthrown. What was this tower of strength? Within its cave what treasure lay so locked, so hid? A woman's grave. But who was she, the lady of the dead, tombed in a palace? Was she chaste and fair, worthy a king's, or more, a Roman's bed? What race of chiefs and heroes did she bear? What daughter of her beauties was the heir? How lived, how loved, how died she? Was she not so honoured, and conspicuously there where meaner relics must not dare to rot, placed to commemorate a more than mortal lot? Was she as those who love their lords, or they who love the lords of others? Such have been, even in the olden time, Rome's annals say. Was she a matron of Cornelia's mien, or the light air of Egypt's graceful queen, profuse of joy? Or gainst it did she war, inveterate in virtue? Did she lean to the soft side of the heart, or wisely bar love from amongst her griefs? For such the affections are. Perchance she died in youth, it may be, bowed with woes far heavier than the ponderous tomb that weighed upon her gentle dust, a cloud might gather o'er her beauty, and a gloom in her dark eye, prophetic of the doom heaven gives its favourites, early death, yet shed a sunset charm around her, and illume with hectic light the Hesperus of the dead, of her consuming cheek the autumnal leaf-like red. Perchance she died in age, surviving all, charms, kindred, children, with the silver grey on her long tresses, which might yet recall, it may be, still a something of the day when they were braided, and her proud array and lovely form were envied, praised, and eyed by Rome. But whither would conjecture stray? Thus much alone we know, Metella died, the wealthiest Roman's wife. Behold his love or pride. I know not why, but standing thus by thee, it seems as if I had thine inmate known, thou tomb, and other days come back on me with recollected music, though the tone is changed and solemn, like the cloudy groan of dying thunder on the distant wind. Yet could I seat me by this ivied stone, till I had bodied forth the heated mind, forms from the floating wreck which ruin leaves behind. And from the planks, far shattered o'er the rocks, built me a little bark of hope, once more to battle with the ocean and the shocks of the loud breakers, and the ceaseless roar which rushes on the solitary shore, where all lies foundered that was ever dear. But could I gather from the wave-worn store enough for my rude boat, where should I steer? There woos no home, nor hope, nor life, save what is here. Then let the winds howl on, their harmony shall henceforth be my music, and the night the sound shall temper with the owlet's cry, as I now hear them in the fading light dim o'er the bird of darkness' native sight, answer each other on the Palatine, with their large eyes all glistening grey and bright, and sailing pinions. Upon such a shrine, what are our petty griefs? Let me not number mine. Cypress and ivy, weed and wallflower grown, matted and massed together, hillocks heaped on what were chambers, arch crushed, columns strown in fragments, choked up vaults, and frescoes steeped in subterranean damps, where the owl peeped, deeming it midnight. Temples, baths, or halls? Pronounce who can, for all that learning reaped from her research hath been, that these are walls. Behold the imperial mount, 'tis thus the mighty falls. There is the moral of all human tales. 'Tis but the same rehearsal of the past, first freedom, and then glory. When that fails, wealth, vice, corruption, barbarism at last. And history, with all her volumes vast, hath but one page. 'Tis better written here, where gorgeous tyranny hath thus amassed all treasures, all delights, that eye or ear, heart, soul could seek, tongue ask. Away with words, draw near, admire, exult, despise, laugh, weep, for here there is such matter for all feeling. Man, thou pendulum betwixt a smile and tear, ages and realms are crowded in this span, this mountain, whose obliterated plan the pyramid of empires pinnacled, of glory's gewgaws shining in the van, till the sun's rays with added flame were filled. Where are its golden roofs? Where those who dared to build? Tully was not so eloquent as thou, thou nameless column with the buried base. What are the laurels of the Caesar's brow? Crown me with ivy from his dwelling place. Whose arch or pillar meets me in the face, Titus or Trajan's? No, 'tis that of Time. Triumph, arch, pillar, all he doth displace, Scoffing; and apostolic statues climb To crush the imperial urn, whose ashes slept sublime, Buried in air, the deep blue sky of Rome, And looking to the stars. They had contained a spirit which with these would find a home, The last of those who o'er the whole earth reigned, The Roman globe, for after none sustained But yielded back his conquests. He was more than a mere Alexander, and unstained with household blood and wine, Serenely wore his sovereign virtues. Still we Trajan's name adore. Where is the rock of triumph, the high place Where Rome embraced her heroes? Where the steep Tarpeian, fittest goal of treason's race, The promontory whence the traitor's leap Cured all ambition? Did the conquerors heap their spoils here? Yes, and in yon field below 1,000 years of silenced factions sleep, The Forum, where the immortal accents glow, And still the eloquent air breathes, burns with Cicero. The field of freedom, faction, fame, and blood. Here a proud people's passions were exhaled, From the first hour of empire in the bud, To that when further worlds to conquer failed. But long before had freedom's face been veiled, And anarchy assumed her attributes, Till every lawless soldier who assailed Trod on the trembling senate's slavish mutes, Or raised the venal voice of baser prostitutes. Then turn we to our latest tribune's name. From her 10,000 tyrants turn to thee, Redeemer of dark centuries of shame, The friend of Petrarch, hope of Italy, Rienzi, last of Romans. While the tree of freedom's withered trunk puts forth a leaf, Even for thy tomb a garland let it be. The Forum's champion, and the people's chief, Her new-born Numa thou, with reign, alas, too brief. End of section 6.
Section 7 of Childe Harold's Pilgrimage, Canto IV. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Childe Harold's Pilgrimage by George Gordon, Lord Byron, Canto IV, verses 115 to 134. Egeria, sweet creation of some heart which found no mortal resting place so fair as thine ideal breast, whate'er thou art or wert, a young Aurora of the air, the nympholepsy of some fond despair. Or it might be a beauty of the earth, who found a more than common votary there, too much adoring, whatsoe'er thy birth, thou wert a beautiful thought, and softly budded forth. The mosses of thy fountain still are sprinkled with thine Elysian water drops, the face of thy cave guarded spring, with years unwrinkled, reflects the meek-eyed genius of the place, whose green wild margin now no more arrays art's works, nor must the delicate waters slip, prisoned in marble, bubbling from the base of the cleft statue, with a gentle lip the rim runs o'er, and round fern flowers and ivy creep, fantastically tangled. The green hills are clothed with early blossoms. Through the grass the quick-eyed lizard rustles, and the bills of summer birds sing welcome as ye pass. Flowers fresh in hue and many in their class implore the pausing step, and with their dyes dance in the soft breeze in a fairy mass. The sweetness of the violet's deep blue eyes kissed by the breath of heaven, seems coloured by its skies. Here didst thou dwell in this enchanted cover, Egeria, thy all heavenly bosom beating for the far footsteps of thy mortal lover, the purple midnight veiled that mystic meeting with her most starry canopy, and seating thyself by thine adorer. What befell? This cave was surely shaped out for the greeting of an unnamed goddess, and the cell haunted by holy love, the earliest oracle. And didst thou not thy breast to his replying blend a celestial with a human heart? And love, which dies as it was born in sighing, share with immortal transports, could thine art make them indeed immortal, and impart the purity of heaven to earthly joys, expel the venom and not blunt the dart, the dull satiety which all destroys, and root from out the soul the deadly weed which cloys? Alas, our young affections run to waste, or water but the desert, whence arise but weeds of dark luxuriance, tares of haste. Rank at the core, though tempting to the eyes, flowers whose wild odours breathe but agonies, and trees whose gums are poison, such the plants which spring beneath her steps as passion flies o'er the world's wilderness, and vainly pants for some celestial fruit forbidden to our wants. O Love, no habitant of earth thou art, an unseen seraph, we believe in thee, a faith whose martyrs are the broken heart, but never yet hath seen, nor ever shall see, the naked eye thy form as it should be. The mind hath made thee, as it peopled heaven, even with its own desiring phantasy, into a thought such shape and image given, as haunts the unquenched soul parched, wearied, wrung, and riven. Of its own beauty is the mind diseased, and fevers into false creation, where are the forms the sculptor's soul hath seized? In him alone can nature show so fair? Where are the charms and virtues which we dare conceive in boyhood and pursue as men? The unreached paradise of our despair, which o'er-informs the pencil and the pen, and overpowers the page where it would bloom again. Who loves, raves. 'Tis youth's frenzy, but the cure is bitterer still, as charm by charm unwinds, which robed our idols, and we see too sure. Nor worth nor beauty dwells from out the mind's ideal shape of such, yet still it binds the fatal spell, and still it draws us on, reaping the whirlwind from the oft-sown winds. The stubborn heart, its alchemy begun, seems ever near the prize wealthiest when most undone. We wither from our youth, we gasp away, seek, unfound the boon, unslaked the thirst. Thou to the last, in verge of our decay, some phantom lures, such as we sought at first. But, all too late, so are we doubly cursed. Love, fame, ambition, avarice, 'tis the same, each idle, and all ill, and none the worst. For all are meteors with a different name, and death the sable smoke where vanishes the flame. Few, none, find what they love or could have loved, though accident, blind contact, and the strong necessity of loving have removed antipathies, but to recur ere long, envenomed with irrevocable wrong, and circumstance that unspiritual God and miscreator makes and helps along our coming evils with a crutch-like rod, whose touch turns hope to dust, the dust we all have trod. Our life is a false nature, 'tis not in the harmony of things, this hard decree, this uneradicable taint of sin, this boundless upas, this all-blasting tree, whose root is earth, whose leaves and branches be the skies which rain their plagues on men like dew. Disease, death, bondage, all the woes we see, and worse, the woes we see not, which throb through the immedicable soul with heartaches ever new. Yet let us ponder boldly, 'tis a base abandonment of reason to resign our right of thought, our last and only place of refuge. This at least shall still be mine, though from our birth the faculty divine is chained and tortured, cabined, cribbed, confined, and bred in darkness, lest the truth should shine too brightly on the unprepared mind. The beam pours in, for time and skill will couch the blind. Arches on arches, as it were that Rome, collecting the chief trophies of her line, would build up all her triumphs in one dome. Her Colosseum stands, the moonbeams shine, as 'twere its natural torches, for divine should be the light which streams here, to illume this long explored, but still exhaustless mine of contemplation, and the azure gloom of an Italian night, where the deep skies assume hues which have words, and speak to ye of heaven, floats o'er this vast and wondrous monument, and shadows forth its glory. There is given unto the things of earth which time hath bent a spirit's feeling, and where he hath lent his hand, but broke his scythe, there is a power and magic in the ruined battlement, for which the palace of the present hour must yield its pomp and wait till ages are its dower. O Time, the beautifier of the dead, adorner of the ruin, comforter and only healer when the heart hath bled, Time, the corrector where our judgments err, the test of truth, love, sole philosopher, for all beside are sophists, from thy thrift, which never loses, though it doth defer. Time, the avenger, and to thee I lift my hands and eyes and heart, and crave of thee a gift. Amidst this wreck, where thou hast made a shrine and temple more divinely desolate, among thy mightier offerings here are mine, ruins of years, though few, yet full of fate, if thou hast ever seen me too late. Hear me not, but if calmly I have borne good and reserved my pride against the hate which shall not whelm me, let me not have worn this iron in my soul in vain. Shall they not mourn? And thou, who never yet of human wrong left the unbalanced scale, great Nemesis, hear when the ancients paid thee homage long. Thou, who didst call the Furies from the abyss, and round Orestes bade them howl and hiss, for that unnatural retribution, just, had it but been from hands less near, in this thy former realm I call thee from the dust. Dost thou not hear my heart? Awake, thou shalt and must. It is not that I may not have incurred, for my ancestral faults or mine, the wound I bleed withal, and had it been conferred with a just weapon, it had flowed unbound. But now my blood shall not sink in the ground. To thee I do devote it, thou shalt take the vengeance which shall yet be sought and found, which if I have not taken for the sake, but let that pass, I sleep, but thou shalt yet awake. And if my voice break forth, 'tis not that now I shriek from what is suffered, let him speak, who hath beheld decline upon my brow, or seen my mind's convulsion leave it weak. But in this page a record will I seek. Not in the air shall these my words disperse, though I be ashes. A far hour shall wreak the deep prophetic fulness of this verse, and pile on human heads the mountain of my curse. End of section 7.
Section 8 of Childe Harold's Pilgrimage, Canto IV. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Alan Weyman. Childe Harold's Pilgrimage by George Gordon, Lord Byron. Canto IV. Stanzas 135 to 156. That curse shall be forgiveness. Have I not? Hear me, my mother earth, behold it heaven. Have I not had to wrestle with my lot? Have I not suffered things to be forgiven? Have I not had my brain seared, my heart riven, hopes sapped, name blighted, life's life lied away? And only not to desperation driven, because not altogether of such clay as rots into the souls of those whom I survey. From mighty wrongs to petty perfidy, have I not seen what human things could do? From the loud roar of foaming calumny to the small whisper of the as paltry few, and subtler venom of the reptile crew, the Janus glance of whose significant eye, learning to lie with silence, would seem true, and without utterance save the shrug or sigh, deal round to happy fools its speechless obloquy. But I have lived, and have not lived in vain. My mind may lose its force, my blood its fire, and my frame perish even in conquering pain, but there is that within me which shall tire torture and time, and breathe when I expire. Something unearthly, which they deem not of, like the remembered tone of a mute lyre, shall on their softened spirits sink, and move in hearts all rocky now the late remorse of love. The seal is set. Now welcome, thou dread power, nameless yet thus omnipotent, which here walk'st in the shadow of the midnight hour, with a deep awe, yet all distinct from fear. Thy haunts are ever where the dead walls rear their ivy mantles, and the solemn scene derives from thee a sense so deep and clear, that we become a part of what has been, and grow unto the spot, all seeing but unseen. And here the buzz of eager nations ran, in murmured pity or loud roared applause, as man was slaughtered by his fellow man. And wherefore slaughtered? Wherefore but because such were the bloody circus' genial laws, and the imperial pleasure? Wherefore not? What matters where we fall to fill the moors of worms, on battle plains or listed spot? Both are but theatres where the chief actors rot. I see before me the gladiator lie. He leans upon his hand, his manly brow consents to death, but conquers agony, and his drooped head sinks gradually low. And through his side the last drops, ebbing slow from the red gash, fall heavy, one by one, like the first of a thunder shower. And now the arena swims around him. He is gone, ere ceased the inhuman shout which hailed the wretch who won. He heard it, but he heeded not. His eyes were with his heart, and that was far away. He recked not of the life he lost, nor prize, but where his rude hut by the Danube lay. There were his young barbarians all at play. There was their Dacian mother, he their sire, butchered to make a Roman holiday. All this rushed with his blood. Shall he expire, and unavenged? Arise, ye Goths, and glut your ire! But here, where murder breathed her bloody stream, And here, where buzzing nations choked the ways, and roared or murmured like a mountain stream, dashing or winding as its torrent strays, here, where the Roman millions' blame or praise was death or life, the playthings of a crowd, my voice sounds much, and fall the stars' faint rays on the arena void, seats crushed, walls bowed, and galleries where my steps seem echoes strangely loud. A ruin, yet what ruin! From its mass, walls, palaces, half cities have been reared, yet oft the enormous skeleton ye pass, and marvel where the spoil could have appeared. Hath it indeed been plundered, or but cleared? Alas, developed opens the decay, when the colossal fabric's form is neared. It will not bear the brightness of the day, which streams too much on all, years, man, have reft away. But when the rising moon begins to climb its topmost arch, and gently pauses there, when the stars twinkle through the loops of time, and the lone night breeze waves along the air, the garland forest which the grey walls wear, like laurels on the bald first Caesar's head, when the light shines serene, but doth not glare, then in this magic circle raise the dead. Heroes have trod this spot, 'tis on their dust ye tread. While stands the Colosseum, Rome shall stand. When falls the Colosseum, Rome shall fall. And when Rome falls, the world. From our own land thus spake the pilgrims o'er this mighty wall in Saxon times, which we are wont to call ancient. And these three mortal things are still on their foundations, and unaltered all. Rome and her ruin past redemption's skill, the world the same wide den, of thieves, or what ye will. Simple, erect, severe, austere, sublime, shrine of all saints, and temple of all gods, from Jove to Jesus, spared and blessed by time, looking tranquillity, while falls or nods arch, empire, each thing round thee, and man plods his way through thorns to ashes. Glorious dome, shalt thou not last? Time's scythe and tyrant's rods shiver upon thee, sanctuary and home of art and piety, Pantheon, pride of Rome. Relic of nobler days and noblest arts, despoiled yet perfect, with thy circle spreads a holiness appealing to all hearts, to art a model, and to him who treads Rome for the sake of ages, glory sheds her light through thy sole aperture. To those who worship, here are altars for their beads, and they who feel for genius may repose their eyes on honoured forms, whose busts around them close. There is a dungeon, in whose dim drear light what do I gaze on? Nothing. Look again. Two forms are slowly shadowed on my sight, two insulated phantoms of the brain. It is not so. I see them full and plain, an old man and a female young and fair, fresh as a nursing mother, in whose vein the blood is nectar. But what doth she there, with her unmantled neck and bosom white and bare? Full swells the deep pure fountain of young life, where on the heart and from the heart we took our first and sweetest nurture, when the wife, blessed into mother, in the innocent look or even the piping cry of lips that brook no pain and small suspense, a joy perceives, man knows not, when from out its cradled nook she sees her little bud put forth its leaves. What may the fruit be yet? I know not. Cain was Eve's. But here youth offers to old age the food, the milk of his own gift. It is her sire to whom she renders back the debt of blood born with her birth. No, he shall not expire, while in those warm and lovely veins the fire of health and holy feeling can provide great Nature's Nile, whose deep stream rises higher than Egypt's river. From that gentle side drink, drink and live, old man. Heaven's realm holds no such tide. The starry fable of the Milky Way has not thy story's purity. It is a constellation of a sweeter ray, and sacred Nature triumphs more in this reverse of her decree, than in the abyss where sparkle distant worlds. O holiest nurse, no drop of that clear stream its way shall miss to thy sire's heart, replenishing its source with life, as our freed souls rejoin the universe. Turn to the mole which Hadrian reared on high, imperial mimic of old Egypt's piles, colossal copyist of deformity, whose travelled fantasy from the far Nile's enormous model doomed the artist's toils to build for giants, and for his vain earth, his shrunken ashes, raise this dome. How smiles the gazer's eye with philosophic mirth, to view the huge design which sprung from such a birth. But lo, the dome, the vast and wondrous dome, to which Diana's marvel was a cell, Christ's mighty shrine above his martyr's tomb. I have beheld the Ephesians' miracle, its columns strew the wilderness, and dwell the hyena and the jackal in their shade. I have beheld Sophia's bright roofs swell their glittering mass of the sun, and have surveyed its sanctuary the while the usurping Moslem prayed. But thou, of temples old or altars new, standest alone, with nothing like to thee. Worthiest of God, the holy and the true, since Zion's desolation, when that he forsook his former city, what could be of earthly structures in his honour piled, of a sublimer aspect? Majesty, power, glory, strength, and beauty, all are isled in this eternal ark of worship undefiled. Enter. Its grandeur overwhelms thee not. And why? It is not lessened, but thy mind, expanded by the genius of the spot, has grown colossal, and can only find a fit abode wherein appear enshrined thy hopes of immortality. And thou shalt one day, if found worthy, so defined, see thy God face to face, as thou dost now his Holy of Holies, nor be blasted by his brow. Thou movest, but increasing with the advance, like climbing some great Alp which still doth rise, deceived by its gigantic elegance, vastness which grows, but grows to harmonize, all musical in its immensities, rich marbles, richer painting, shrines where flame the lamps of gold, and haughty dome which vies in air with earth's chief structures, though their frame sits on the firm set ground, and this the clouds must claim. End of section 8. Section 9 of Childe Harold's Pilgrimage, Canto IV. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Alan Weyman. Childe Harold's Pilgrimage by George Gordon Lord Byron, Canto IV, stanzas 157 to 174. Thou seest not all, but piecemeal thou must break to separate contemplation the great whole. And as the ocean many bays will make that ask the eye, so here condense thy soul to more immediate objects, and control thy thoughts until thy mind hath got by heart its eloquent proportions, and unroll in mighty graduations, part by part, the glory which at once upon thee did not dart. Not by its fault, but thine. Our outward sense is but of gradual grasp, and as it is that what we have of feeling most intense outstrips our faint expression, even so this outshining and o'erwhelming edifice fools our fond gaze, and greatest of the great defies at first our nature's littleness, till, growing with its growth, we thus dilate our spirits to the size of that they contemplate. Then pause, and be enlightened. There is more in such a survey than the sating gaze of wonder pleased, or awe which would adore the worship of the place, or the mere praise of art and its great masters, who could raise what former time nor skill nor thought could plan. The fountain of sublimity displays its depth, and thence may draw the mind of man its golden sands, and learn what great conceptions can. Or, turning to the Vatican, go see Laocoon's torture dignifying pain, a father's love and mortal's agony with an immortal's patience blending. Vain the struggle, vain against the coiling strain and gripe and deepening of the dragon's grasp, the old man's clench, the long envenomed chain rivets the living links. The enormous asp enforces pang on pang, and stifles gasp on gasp. Or view the lord of the unerring bow, the god of life and poesy and light, the sun in human limbs arrayed, and brow all radiant from his triumph in the fight. The shaft hath just been shot, the arrow bright with an immortal's vengeance, in his eye and nostril beautiful disdain, and might and majesty flash their full lightnings by, developing in that one glance the deity. But in his delicate form, a dream of love, shaped by some solitary nymph, whose breast longed for a deathless lover from above, and maddened in that vision, are expressed all that ideal beauty ever blessed the mind with in its most unearthly mood, when each conception was a heavenly guest, a ray of immortality, and stood star-like around until they gathered to a god. And if it be Prometheus stole from heaven the fire which we endure, it was repaid by him to whom the energy was given which this poetic marble hath arrayed with an eternal glory, which, if made by human hands, is not of human thought, and time itself hath hallowed it, nor laid one ringlet in the dust, nor hath it caught a tinge of years, but breathes the flame with which 'twas wrought. But where is he, the pilgrim of my song, the being who upheld it through the past? Methinks he cometh late, and tarries long. He is no more, these breathings are his last. His wanderings done, his visions ebbing fast, and he himself as nothing. If he was aught but a fantasy, and could be classed with forms which live and suffer, let that pass. His shadow fades away into destruction's mass, which gathers shadow, substance, life, and all that we inherit in its mortal shroud, and spreads the dim and universal pall through which all things grow phantoms, and the cloud between us sinks and all which ever glowed, till glory's self is twilight, and displays a melancholy halo scarce allowed to hover on the verge of darkness, rays sadder than saddest night, for they distract the gaze, and send us prying into the abyss, to gather what we shall be when the frame shall be resolved to something less than this its wretched essence, and to dream of fame, and wipe the dust off from the idle name we nevermore shall hear. But nevermore, oh, a happier thought, can we be made the same. It is enough in sooth that once we bore these fardels of the heart whose sweat was gore. Hark! Forth from the abyss a voice proceeds, a long, low, distant murmur of dread sound, such as arises when a nation bleeds with some deep and immedicable wound. Through storm and darkness yawns the rending ground, the gulf is thick with phantoms, but the chief seems royal still, though with her head discrowned, and pale but lovely with maternal grief she clasps a babe to whom her breast yields no relief. Scion of chiefs and monarchs, where art thou? Fond hope of many nations, art thou dead? Could not the grave forget thee, and lay low some less majestic, less beloved head? In the sad midnight, while thy heart still bled, the mother of a moment, or thy boy, death hushed that pang forever. With thee fled the present happiness and promised joy, which filled the imperial isles so full it seemed to cloy. Peasants, bring forth in safety! Can it be, O thou that wert so happy, so adored? Those who weep not for kings shall weep for thee, and freedom's heart, grown heavy, cease to hoard her many griefs for one. For she had poured her orisons for thee, and o'er thy head beheld her iris. Thou too, lonely lord, and desolate consort, vainly wert thou wed, the husband of a year, the father of the dead. Of sackcloth was thy wedding garment made, thy bridal's fruit is ashes, in the dust the fair-haired daughter of the isles is laid, the love of millions. How we did entrust futurity to her! And though it must darken above our bones, yet fondly deemed our children should obey her child, and blessed her and her hoped-for seed, whose promise seemed like stars to shepherds' eyes. 'Twas but a meteor beamed. Woe unto us, not her! For she sleeps well. The fickle reek of popular breath, the tongue of hollow counsel, the false oracle, which from the birth of monarchy hath rung its knell in princely ears, till the o'erstung nations have armed in madness, the strange fate which tumbles mightiest sovereigns, and hath flung against their blind omnipotence a weight within the opposing scale, which crushes soon or late. These might have been her destiny, but no, our hearts deny it, and so young, so fair, good without effort, great without a foe, but now a bride and mother, and now there. How many ties did that stern moment tear? From thy sire's to his humblest subject's breast is linked the electric chain of that despair, whose shock was as an earthquake's, and oppressed the land which loved thee so that none could love thee best. Lo, Nelly, navelled in the woody hills so far, that the uprooting wind which tears the oak from his foundation, and which spills the ocean o'er its boundary, and bears its form against the skies, reluctant spares the oval mirror of thy glassy lake, and calm as cherished hate, its surface wears a deep cold settled aspect naught can shake, all coiled into itself and round as sleeps the snake. And near, Albano's scarce divided waves shine from a sister valley, and afar the Tiber winds, and the broad ocean laves the Latian coast where sprung the epic war, arms and the man, whose reascending star rose o'er an empire. But beneath thy right Tully reposed from Rome, and where yon bar of girdling mountains intercepts the sight, the Sabine farm was tilled, the weary bard's delight. End of section 9. Section 10 of Childe Harold's Pilgrimage, Canto IV. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Alan Weyman. Childe Harold's Pilgrimage by George Gordon, Lord Byron. Canto IV. Stanzas 175 to 186. But I forget. My pilgrim's shrine is won, and he and I must part, so let it be. His task and mine alike are nearly done. Yet once more let us look upon the sea. The midland ocean breaks on him and me, and from the Alban mount we now behold our friend of youth, that ocean, which when we beheld it last by Calpe's rock unfold those waves, we followed on till the dark Euxine rolled upon the blue Symplegades. Long years, long, though not very many, since have done their work on both, some suffering and some tears have left us nearly where we had begun. Yet not in vain our mortal race hath run. We have had our reward, and it is here, that we can yet feel gladdened by the sun, and reap from earth, sea, joy almost as dear as if there were no man to trouble what is clear. Oh, that the desert were my dwelling place, with one fair spirit for my minister, that I might all forget the human race, and, hating no one, love but only her. Ye elements, in whose ennobling stir I feel myself exalted, can ye not accord me such a being? Do I err in deeming such inhabit many a spot, though with them to converse can rarely be our lot? There is a pleasure in the pathless woods, there is a rapture on the lonely shore, there is society where none intrudes, by the deep sea, and music in its roar. I love not man the less, but nature more, from these our interviews, in which I steal from all I may be, or have been before, to mingle with the universe, and feel what I can ne'er express, yet cannot all conceal. Roll on, thou deep and dark blue ocean, roll. 10,000 fleets sweep over thee in vain. Man marks the earth with ruin, his control stops with the shore. Upon the watery plain the wrecks of all thy deed, nor doth remain a shadow of man's ravage, save his own, when for a moment, like a drop of rain, he sinks into thy depths with bubbling groan, without a grave, unknelled, uncoffined, and unknown. His steps are not upon thy paths, thy fields are not a spoil for him. Thou dost arise and shake him from thee. The vile strength he wields for earth's destruction thou dost all despise, spurning him from thy bosom to the skies, and send'st him shivering in thy playful spray, and howling to his gods, where haply lies his petty hope in some near port or bay, and dashest him again to earth. There let him lay. The armaments which thunderstrike the walls of rock-built cities, bidding nations quake, and monarchs tremble in their capitals, the oak leviathans, whose huge ribs make their clay creator the vain title take of Lord of thee, and Arbiter of war. These are thy toys, and as the snowy flake, they melt into thy yeast of waves, which mar alike the Armada's pride, or spoils of Trafalgar. Thy shores are empires changed in all save thee. Assyria, Greece, Rome, Carthage, what are they? Thy waters washed them power while they were free, and many a tyrant since. Their shores obey the stranger, slave, or savage. Their decay has dried up realms to deserts. Not so thou, unchangeable save to thy wild waves' play. Time writes no wrinkle on thine azure brow. Such as creation's dawn beheld, thou rollest now. Thou glorious mirror, where the Almighty's form glasses itself in tempests, in all time, calm or convulsed, in breeze or gale or storm, icing the pole, or in the torrid clime dark heaving, boundless, endless, and sublime, the image of eternity, the throne of the invisible. Even from out thy slime the monsters of the deep are made, each zone obeys thee, thou goest forth, dread, fathomless, alone. And I have loved thee, ocean, and my joy of youthful sports was on thy breast to be borne like thy bubbles, onward. From a boy I wantoned with thy breakers, they to me were a delight, and if the freshening sea made them a terror, 'twas a pleasing fear, for I was as it were a child of thee, and trusted to thy billows far and near, and laid my hand upon thy mane, as I do here. My task is done, my song hath ceased, my theme has died into an echo. It is fit the spell should break of this protracted dream. The torch shall be extinguished which hath lit my midnight lamp, and what is writ is writ. Would it were worthier, but I am not now that which I have been, and my visions flit less palpably before me, and the glow which in my spirit dwelt is fluttering, faint, and low. Farewell, a word that must be, and hath been, a sound which makes us linger, yet farewell. Ye who have traced the pilgrim to the scene which is his last, if in your memories dwell a thought which once was his, if on ye swell a single recollection, not in vain he wore his sandal shoon and scallop shell. Farewell, with him alone may rest the pain, if such there were, with you the moral of his strain. End of section 10. End of Childe Harold's Pilgrimage, Canto IV, by Lord Byron.